What's up, YouTube? Two-wheel teacher back at you. Today's motovlog is like not a motovlog because I'm not on the bike. I'm in the garage. That's because I got home just about a week ago from what amounted to about a 2,600 mile road trip on the bike from North Florida back to the Midwest, Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, and then back to Tallahassee here in North Florida, which means having done all of that on the bike, including one Saddle Sore 1000, it is time for a little bit of routine maintenance on the streak light here. So I'm doing a 3-plug oil change. I have done engine oil before. I've never done primary, I've never done transmission, but I just watched a handful of videos on how to do it, talked to the guys at the Tallahassee Harley-Davidson shop to get me an oil change kit, kind of walk me through a couple of the intricacies that can pop up during a routine oil change. So I think I've got all the information I need to do my own oil change, but let me just say before I dive into the guts of this video, this is not a how-to. I am not explaining to you how to do an oil change because I'm not a Harley tech. I don't have a certificate, don't have any training hours. This is not me telling you how to do this. This is more of, hey, do you remember that time I did that thing? Yeah, this is one of those things that I'm doing. So let's talk about what we're doing. I'll move the camera here. If you heard the word 3-plug oil change and you're like, what's a 3-plug oil change? On a big V-twin Harley like this, you're going to have your engine oil, you're going to have your primary oil, and you're going to have your transmission oil. Out of those 3 different types of oil, you really only have 2 types of oil, and they're these. So you've got your Syn 3 full synthetic motorcycle lubricant. So I've got 4 quarts of this that I'm going to use for the actual engine oil. So if you've never done stuff on a bike and you're like, what's all these oils? This is the stuff that goes in like a regular engine to keep everything lubricated inside the crankcase, keep everything cool. It does have, you know, an oil cool on it. So that's what this is for. And then this is your genuine Formula Plus transmission primary chain case lubricant. That's a different section of the motor, and that is a section of the motor that basically takes the power and the force coming from the cylinders on the crankshaft and then translate that into usable power through the transmission. So that's the parts that do the translating part from the crank to the rest of the power line. That's what this is for. So I've got 2 quarts of this, I've got 4 quarts of this, and I'm going to be putting it into 3 different areas of the motor that I'm going to drain first. So other than what I've just shown you, I also have my chrome oil filter here because we're going to replace the oil filter. I've got a gasket for the inside of the derby cover in the primary case, and then I've got the 3 O-rings for my 3 separate plugs that I'm going to be pulling out of the bike today. So this is the second time that I've done any kind of oil change, so I'm probably going to make some mistakes, and maybe I'll show some of those to you guys here, maybe I won't. A couple things I learned from the first time: have lots of towels on hand. Especially for when you go to change your actual oil filter. That thing's going to bust open and it's going to drop like a cup and a half of oil down on to whatever's under it. So that's going to fall onto different parts of the bike itself, but then it's also going to fall onto the floor. And I can't really see that oil stain anymore, but I can see some oil stains. This is obviously, you know, there's been more than a couple things done on top of this floor in this garage. So I've got my actual oil catcher. This should hold just about every drop of everything that's going to be coming out of the bike today. And then I'm actually going to be putting this on top of a towel to actually catch any excess oil that either spills or splashes or that I'm just too careless to actually catch. So yeah, I'm going to jump in and get started. And hopefully I can get my camera angles right on this so you're not just like staring at my bare ass on the garage floor or something. But whatever, here we go. If you watch how-to videos on this, chances are you're going to see a professional shop or RevZilla or someone that's actually doing something on the bike and they've got it up on a lift. I don't own a lift, just Joe Schmo with a motorcycle doing some work in the garage. So as you can see, I've got my towel laid down, I've got my oil catcher here right under the plug, and then what I did was I loosened the dipstick plug here on the engine oil dipstick. And the reason I did that is when I go to pop the plug from that oil pan, if this is sealed, then you're going to get a little bit of oil flow, and then it's going to have to correct the air pressure, and you're going to get a little oil flow, it's going to have to correct the air pressure. If you just have an open air system here because you've popped your actual dipstick plug here, you're not going to have any correction because the air is going to equalize by air coming in through the dipstick entrance, and then you're just going to have a flow of oil coming out from the bottom of your case. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that out now, and we'll go ahead and take care of that O-ring while we're at it. So to be honest, I don't remember what size Allen head is going to fit into this oil plug, so I don't remember it from the video I watched, so we're just going to give it a shot. I don't think it's a quarter. I think it's bigger than that. It might be 5/16. Let's find out. Alright, now 5/16. There we go. That's gonna do it. So I don't have an extension or nothing. My tool collection is actually pretty limited, but gets the job done. So if you're thinking, man, you don't have all the tools you should have, you're 100% right. I'm also a broke-ass recent graduate student, so whatever. So we have really healthy flow coming out of the oil pan. Oil was definitely pretty black. It was definitely time for an oil change. So I'm glad we're doing this now. We can go ahead and take a look at this oil plug. So you're going to hear lots of different opinions on how frequently you should change your O-rings. Just looking at this O-ring, I only did my last oil change probably 8 weeks ago. I just happen to have done a lot of riding since then. This is my actual oil plug, and then that is, here we go, the O-ring. I don't know if it's going to focus greatly. It's not actually in that bad a shape. I'm going to go ahead and change it anyway, just so that it's been changed and I don't have to worry about it for the next one. Okay, so got the new O-ring on the plug. I'm just going to leave it right here, along with my couple other O-rings, because I'm going to be working mostly on this side of the bike when I go to pull plugs. Right now the stream is just probably, I don't know, it's a pretty thin stream, but it is going to take a little while for all that oil to come out. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and pop off the oil filter. And this is where, again, you need to have a bunch of towels on hand and or one of these. This is a trick I saw in a video that I decided I definitely needed to use on this one. This is just a gallon Ziploc bag, Glad bag, whatever, and I'm going to put it, as soon as I've got it busted loose, I'm just going to put this around that oil filter with some towels under the oil filter, just to make sure any excess oil gets caught and doesn't end up on the rest of the bike or end up on my garage floor. Alright, so I've got the oil filter off. It was a really good idea to have that towel, that light blue towel, just kind of strung through up under the bike, because sure enough, it kicked off a bunch of oil. That just comes with how they're built and engineered into the frame. So I'm going to grab that new one. One of the things I'm going to do with that new oil filter, I'm going to pop open one of the quarts of the new engine oil. I'm just going to put a couple tablespoons worth-ish into the filter, and then I'm going to line the actual gasket on the inside of the oil filter so that it seals up real nice, snug up into what it attaches to. You don't need to like torque this down, I guess. You just need to get it snug. So I've heard as soon as it finally sits onto it, it's another 1/2 to 3/4 turn, but you don't need to over tighten this. Okay, so the engine oil is pretty much slowed to a trickle. We've got the new engine oil filter on there. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this plug, and then we're going to move to the next batch. Alright, so I have to make one of those like slightly embarrassing quick runs to like an AutoZone or an auto parts store, because I don't have the necessary ratchet size to get onto the plug, which is in the transmission oil. So this is not the first time I've had to do that. I'm building my tools and parts collection sort of one job at a time. So if you've ever had to do this, you know the slight embarrassment and sort of the bummer of having to pause your workflow so you can go get stuff that you need. But if you've never done any maintenance on your own bike and you're like, you know, why would I, you know, blah, blah, blah. If you're worried about it, you're embarrassed about it, this is all of us. We're just working on our bikes, man. Go buy the parts you need, go get the stuff you need, and finish the job. So here we go. All right, everybody, we're back. We got the ratchet parts that we need. I got a full set. It was only like 28 bucks, and I also got a 3-inch extender, which I had been wanting anyway. So one thing I had forgotten to mention earlier is if you're working in your garage and it's hot, you have to stay hydrated. And what better way to stay hydrated than to ensure that you're not going to run into any legal trouble? And I say that because if you don't know already, there are no laws when you're drinking plus. Whatever. Alright, let's go ahead and get this transmission drain plug out of there. Alright, so this is funny. Here's the transmission drain plug, and it's got some crap on it that I'm going to take care of, but this is the O-ring. So when we're talking about replacing those consistently, that's why. So now that that transmission fluid is draining, we're going to wait just a couple minutes and wait for that to drain, and then we're going to jump onto the other side of the bike and we're going to drain the primary transmission fluid from the left side of the bike. So let's do that. Okay, so we're over on the left side of the bike. Your primary fluid plug is just right in front of your derby cover. We're going to drag that over so we know where we're going to be. Alright guys, this O-ring is actually in really good shape. We're going to go ahead and hold on to this one. Alright, so it would appear that my 5-quart oil container is not going to hold all the oil. You guys can't see it right now, but I am like that much oil off from an overflow. So that's another lesson to have learned. I need a bigger oil catcher. Okay guys, so a couple things that I've edited out that I got to bring it back up to speed on. Number one, can't really see it at the moment, but there is no more oil catcher under here. That's because I had Haley, my fiance, bring me a little Tupperware because I was getting some overflow. So I thought, like I said earlier, that my 5-quart oil catcher was just not big enough. And then I noticed some very slow bubbles coming up from the pool that was sitting on top of the container. Well, I loosened one of the plugs on it, and apparently there was a big bubble in there, and the whole thing was just vapor locked on the inside. So I released some air pressure, and then we were good to go. So I'm going to get this last plug in. We've officially drained all the fluids out of the bike, and we're going to start replacing some of the fluids. Okay, so like I said, I'm not an expert, definitely not a tech. What I've got here is just an online user manual for 2013 Street Glide. And all I'm doing is just going through, and I'm going to find the table that tells me all the different oil capacities and how to fill up what and ABC, just to make sure. So here we go. Capacities: engine oil with filter, 4 quarts, transmission, 1 quart, and then primary chain case, 1.4 quarts. And it's got some asterisks. So when refilling the engine oil, add 3 quarts and add as needed to bring level to specification. And for the transmission, which is on the right side of the bike, initially add 28 ounces and add as needed to bring to within specification. So start on the right side of the bike, and then we'll top off the primary. So here we've got our 3 quarts of engine oil. I'm going to pull out the dipstick. We're going to set that aside. We're going to grab our funnel. Here is our funnel. And it says to start with 3 quarts and then add as needed. So let's do that. There's 1. Okay, so we've got 3 quarts in there now. You might be tempted to turn the bike over, get it warmed up, but you also have to remember there's no transmission fluid in there right now, there's no primary fluid. So I would not recommend running this bike all the way to hot, because you're missing oil and lubricant and coolant that's going to keep the entire engine cool. So what we're going to go and do is we're going to lock up the engine oil there, and then we're going to grab the transmission plug there. So here's our transmission dipstick. Very small tolerance there. So if I remember right, yeah, okay. So it says here again, and if you get anything out of this video, I hope you understand that you don't have to know everything, and it's totally okay to use whatever information is available to you to make sure you do a good job the first time. You know, the worst thing is getting halfway through a job, realizing you messed up, and now you have to take it to a shop to pay shop labor prices and shop parts prices just to get it fixed when you could have done it right the first time yourself. So it says here, transmission, add 28 ounces, and then as needed to bring to level. So we're going to add until this says it's got about 8 ounces left in it. Alright, we got about 8 ounces left here in this quart. So we're going to take the funnel, set the funnel down, take our dipstick here. It is important to screw this all the way on. We're obviously not going to torque it down. And then we're going to pull it out. So we're not quite to the tolerance area. It needs just a little bit more oil. And we are just right up to the full line. So transmission fluid is done. Alright, so that leaves just one more oil. That's going to be the the primary oil. So let's head over for that. Okay, so we're going to take these 5 bolts out of the primary here. Had to loosen up a passenger footboard so I could get to one of the bolts, and that's not a big deal. And then I did replace a towel back under here, because even though we've drained all the primary fluid out, we're still going to have to put some fluid back in, and then we might get just a little bit of leakage when we take this off. We got a problem. We got a strip bolt. Okay guys, we're back, and you can tell I've changed. I'm not wearing the same shirt. It's actually been a couple hours since I last hit stop on this video, and that is because the 5th bolt on my derby cover was totally stripped out. There was nothing left for any of my bits to grab onto, and that son of a bitch was stuck in there. So the biggest option, most obvious option, was tow it to the dealership, have them take care of it. They're the bike experts, let them do it. That's the smartest thing to do, but it's also the most costly thing to do. And I'm not really in a position to worry about costly, and I've done enough work on my bike to feel like I've got a little bit of intuition when it comes to knowing whether or not I'm doing a little bit too much, and I felt like this was in my wheelhouse. So what I did was I stopped at the Harley shop and I got a set of replacement bolts for my derby cover. That was step one, because it's obvious that some of this hardware is a little stripped out, and I don't want to run into this problem again in the future. So then I stopped by a hardware store and I got a couple different things. I've already put them away. So, well, here's what you need to see. So I bought a Tap-It combo bit, which basically drilled a hole down the center, as you can see here, into this screw. Then I used one of these looseners, and basically they're reverse threaded, really hard, I don't know, tungsten or something, I don't know what they're made out of, but basically you drill a hole down the center of your bolt, and then you push, you hammer one of these into that hole, and then in order to tighten this into that shank of your screw, it's actually the lefty-loosey motion. So as it gets tighter into the shank of the bolt, it's actually helping to loosen the bolt. And a little bit of trial and error, a pretty deep hole bored into that thing. I don't know if the lighting is good enough that you can see it, but it's down probably to maybe the last thread or so inside the shank of the bolt. Got that in there, a little bit of tugging on it with the drill and with the wrench, and we got it loose. So now, finally, I'm going to go ahead and put in my primary fluid. 1 quart, here we go. Alright, so Harley does make, and they do sell, what amounts to a funnel that is especially made for filling your primary. My funnel's got a narrow enough tip on it that I'm just going to dump it in there and pay attention. Here we go. Alright, guys, that's it. So, all that's left, got a new gasket in here. All that's left is to get this sucker back on. I'm going to go ahead and replace all 5 of my bolts. And what I'm going to do is you need to work in a star pattern when you go to tighten them. So I'm just going to get all my bolts started, and then I'm going to torque them in a star pattern. So all I'm doing is I'm going around, and when I feel each one of these screws just sit into it, then I stop. So again, I'm going to come back and torque them out later. Alright guys, so I went ahead and took 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to put all my tools away, and I left the bike idling while I was putting my tools away. That's because you got to remember that when you're doing your engine oil, you're going to measure the actual tolerance of how much oil you've got in your oil pan after it's been warmed up. So by letting the bike idle for 4 or 5 minutes while you put your tools away or clean up your workspace, lets the engine bring the oil up to temperature, lets it do what it does with expansion as it gets hotter, and then we're going to go ahead and check the dipstick right now to see what our oil level is, and then we're going to go ahead and top it off to make sure we've got enough oil in the whole system as it goes. So we're at about halfway to the full mark, which means we need about, I mean, we're probably fully within tolerance, to be quite honest. I've got a little bit left over from this container, so I'm just going to free pour this in there, and I think we're going to be good. One more. That's a full oil pan. We're all set. Alright guys, so yeah, that was a video of me doing a thing. That was a 3-plug oil change. This was totally non-instructive, so if you follow any of my instructions, something goes wrong, it's not my fault, that's your fault. As with almost anything that you try to do yourself, you're going to run into some hiccups. I ran into some hiccups, needed to go buy parts twice, or parts or tools twice to fix a couple issues. But we're all set, so the only thing left to do is go take it for a test drive, and unfortunately I can't take the phone with me, well, as a camera for that. So until next time, I'm the Two-Wheel Teacher, and I'll see you guys on the road.